Happy New Year's Eve, Lion Golf Academy members and guests. Yes, this is a very special video that I know is going to hit home to all of you watching this, because if you can see, the video on the right side was taken in 2001 and the video on the left side was taken recently, and I found this video while modding, and I reached out to the owner. I said, hey look, I think this will make a great educational video for those watching, because I'm a huge advocate that says you are stuck with the DNA motion. So before I made this video, I got his permission to use this, and thank you for letting me use this. But I reached out to him. I said, hey, give me as much detail as you can about this so I have at least some information to work with. And he replied with, hey, so I had a huge gap of roughly 10 years where I played basically no golf, then restarted 3 years ago, and I was horrified with my game, so I took some lessons to try to get back my prior level. Wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, and I also went down a stupid YouTube rabbit hole. I went back to not thinking hardly at all about mechanics. Roughly in September, my game was gone and it came back. I've worked with an online coach who did me good guidance on the big flaws. The changes he has me making are ongoing and pretty simple, trying to avoid being too inside on the takeaway and a focus on my trail elbow in the downswing. Back enjoying the game after a few years of being very, very humbled. So if you notice that these two swings, there's not much that separates them. I mean, here we have somebody that's 24 years older, almost, it's New Year's, 24 years older, and we see the same tempo, we see the same rhythm, we see the same timing involved, we see the same skeletal system of golf swings. I do notice a couple of changes. We're going to go over those changes today, so stick with me through the whole video, because I know this can affect you and how you look at your old swing when you were hitting it good, and how do you move that back to your new swing. We're going to look at setup, we're going to look at the cause and effect and setup, and take a look at what he's working on and see if we can provide a different avenue for him. So let's get going. So I'm going to leave the comments off for this video, and I'm going to ask you a question at the end of the video for a bonus. So in other words, if you know the answer to the question, send me the answer to my email, tony@liongolfacademy.com. Not lying, lion like the animal, golfacademy.com. Tell me the answer. Wait till the end of the video, because that's where the question is about his swing. So I know these videos are not exactly the same, and obviously we're recording with a camcorder on the right side, which this is the way I used to give golf lessons. So I'm just bringing back some old memories. But what we can notice is the older one had a more upright setup. The plane was a little bit higher. However, the weighting was about the same. So if you take a look at the new setup on the left side, we can see a little bit more distance between that club and the feet versus the bottom one. We can see that there's less distance, and as a result, we see a taller plane. Now, the one on the right side is definitely a steeper plane, and we're looking at that long green line. It is more upright. There are good things and bad things, but overall, we can see the centering is about the same. However, the new one is a little bit further back. Now we might have some issues with that based on your DNA range of motion and your abilities. Now remember, we always think that we want to be like the tour pros. However, they just have a whole different body to work with, and we're stuck with our body, which includes a lot of DNA. So if we take a look at that first move back, we can see both clubs do go inside, and I know that he worked on trying to keep that club not going inside so much. However, I believe that made the old swing work, because the old swing had to be inside because of that upright setup, and this allowed the arms to get deep enough. So if you go to the top of the swing here, the camera did shift on the right side, but both hands now are deep enough. And by depth, we're looking at that yellow line, which is the centeredness line. And we see that both hands do get right on that centeredness line. So an old cause and effect, which was not addressed in the new setup. So if you are going to get a new setup by giving yourself more spacing, you also have to address the cause and effect in that new setup and change that too, because what we have not addressed, and this will definitely help to get your hands more on plane, is take a look at that shoulder tilt number. So the shoulder tilt, we have lost some shoulder tilt relative to your spine angle, versus the old guy, we still see we have lost some, but not as much. So for those looking at this saying, what are you talking about? So see that T that it formed on the old one, that's pretty perpendicular to his spine angle. The one on the left side, we're not forming a T anymore, which means that his right shoulder, since he's a lefty, is not staying down long enough. Now, when you don't stay down long enough, your arms do have to roll slightly to get that club back on the inside. So without addressing your shoulders, all you're going to be doing is rolling the club back further to make sure they get deep enough. So we have to address that good setup on the left side, which I like that setup change, but you got to address the next step, which is keeping your shoulders relative to that new setup, not carrying over the old shoulder tilting to compensate that old move. Now, we say that because the old compensation move actually worked pretty well. So we're going to keep that red spine angle up there. And what we're going to do is look at the triangle check. And this is one that I want to encourage everybody to do. We're going to do it in our favorite Barney purple, and we're going to see that triangle check. Just go ahead and draw where your elbows meet, where the bottom of the club is, and we can see that there's somewhat of a triangle. It's hard to see with that old potato recording on the right side, but take a look at the first move down. Let's watch that left side first. Let's follow the butt of the club. So we're going to draw a little X. Let's do this in orange. So there's first X, next frame. We're going to go down to here. There's another X, and next frame. We're going to go down. Whoop, that jumps all over the place. So we can see the path of the club is doing a pretty good job by going right down that center to maybe slightly to the left, slightly. But the one on the right side, let's take a look at his club. So we're going to draw the first X here. The second X is right there. And the third X is right about here. So we can see that his club is working a very similar path. So there's nothing wrong with the paths. It's the same path, but take a look at the difference between the planes. The one on the left side is a little steeper. We see the club face is suffering. It is definitely at the top of the swing. It is definitely open to his target, and it's crossing the line slightly. So there is some disconnection, and he's trying to reconnect down at impact. So we never quite get the club on that lower plane line. The guy on the right side, you can see the club fluttering. Let's delete some of these lines here so it's not too confusing, but we can see the guy on the right side. Let's take the triangles too. Let's look at the club on the way through. So here is club number 1, and here is club number 2. So we at least have the guy on the right side getting below the plane, which allows him at this point to rotate and tilt. So this is a good little picture here. We can see that there's daylight in both angles. So we see the DNA motion is still there. As you strike the golf ball, we see that the closing of the club face is still there. However, remember that shoulder tilt issue I talked about? We still see a shoulder tilt issue now. So let's clean up all these lines and let's do a shoulder tilt check right here, right past parallel. We can see this one is at 43 and this one is at 62. 62. So we have 20 more degrees of tilting, and we go to the top of the swing. Let's take a look in comparison. Let's draw this tilt number. So here's the top of the swing here. So we have 28 degrees. So we increase by 15 degrees. And let's go to the top of the swing here. We connect these two shoulders together and we have 33 degrees. So almost 30 degrees of tilting versus the one on the left side, only 15 degrees. So we have half of our tilting issue. Now remember, for you at home, if you don't tilt, it's very hard for your hands to drop in the slot because that tilting action, just get your hands to move down. So I'm going to do it right here. So here is less tilt. See where my hands are going? Here is the tilting first. So the more you can tilt, the more your hands will drop down, and then we can turn. Here is turn, and even if I try to tilt at the last second, it's too late. My hands are already going outside. But we have to look at why that is the case, because if you look at his old setup, it was very upright. He would disconnect his shoulders, which will flatten them out, but then on the way down through, he would be able to come from the inside and add the tilt, where the one on the left side has not addressed the shoulder tilting issue. So if this was my student, I would definitely work on keeping that shoulder more level to the better setup. This is a much better setup on the left side, but you have not addressed the shoulder tilting. So you need to work on this. Here is your spine angle. You need to get your shoulders perpendicular to that spine angle at the top of your swing. So as you take that club back, you can see immediately that shoulder, the right shoulder comes up. Get your right shoulder to dip down. If you take a look at where the club is parallel to the ground, we can see right, it's in between frames. So let's just do this one. You would like, let's say the club is parallel to the ground here. You would like, ideally, to have everything touching that. So the club head is right over that. These hands need to get a little bit more inside. You can only do that by keeping your shoulders relative. So right shoulder more down will help those hands move more inside, and you can connect that club head a little bit closer to make it work for this newer setup. The crazy thing about this swing is if you hit play, it's the same DNA'd motions. We've just changed the setup, but haven't looked at the cause and effect of the old setup and worked on that with the new setup. So you have have your DNA stuff in you, if you do a setup change, you have to look at your old cause and effect and address that in your setup change. So let's go to the face on and look at the setup changes here, and you will notice the one on the left side is a much better setup. However, the one on the right side, he compensated correctly for that setup, where the one on the left side is probably carrying over the old compensations for a new setup, which won't really work. So here is the shoulder tilting, and the right side we can see the shoulder tilting. So we definitely see a lot of more weight on his right foot. And if we connect our spine angles, which is basically perpendicular to those shoulder tilts, we can see we're carrying about the same shoulder tilt. However, look at the ball position. So if we move the ball position up from green line straight up to the sky, you know what? We're paying, how much are we paying here? $19.95. So we're going to use a vertical line. There's the vertical line straight up, and here's the vertical line straight up. Now, I know that this one on the left side is on a T. I'm not sure if he's trying to hit up on it on purpose, but you can see, look at the head position related to the ball. So right now, the whole center of the chest is ahead of the golf ball on this right swing. The left side, the center of the chest is behind the golf ball. So there is going to be some compensations. And if you don't compensate, you're going to do the old compensations with the new setup, which is going to be very hard to do. And if you draw the club shaft, and we can see the club shaft is right there. Look how close that is to the ball position versus the old club shaft. We do have a forward press going on here, specifically related to that tilt. So we have a predetermined forward press. Can we carry that over? Sometimes you have to move further left to carry it over. Sometimes you can stay back and just increase your tilting, which he does really well here in the old swing to make it work. But let's take a look at the top of the swing here. We can see the depth has increased a lot, and let's move my head and shrink it down a little bit to show you that depth. We're going to draw this in, let's go Barney purple. We can see there's the club shaft versus here is the club shaft. I really like the old depth better in terms of that club shaft related to him and his turn. So if we take a look at the turn, we're going to draw this in Barney purple too. So there's about the shoulder turn, which is good still because it doesn't cross the tee. But look at this shoulder turn and the spacing. We have a huge gap. It's much easier to carry it down. We can see by keeping things more connected, you can take that down a lot easier. And as we come on down through into impact, we can see he carries that a lot more efficiently. Look at the right side. He just takes that same angle and pulls it straight down, where the one on the left side has to reconnect slightly. And keep in mind, he's also turning a lot instead of tilting. And as we strike that golf ball, we can see at impact, look at the head position now and related to the ball. The head position is trying to stay back, but most of the body is ahead. And a great way to check this out is let's draw another red line and look at the tilt and increase, and also look at his spine angle versus the older one. We see the increase, obviously a little bit more, but look at the spine angle. It's still relative to his original setup. So he hasn't really done much in terms of manipulating the setup, even with the forward press. So this is actually a very good compensation. We see the same compensation on the new swing, but it's a new setup. So you can't carry the old compensations on a new setup. I can't stress that enough. And we see a big difference as we follow through. Look at the way the one on the right side stays more centered on his follow through, with the one on the left side, look at how much of his weight is over to the right side. So I'm going to draw a quick little X here in Barney purple. We can see that ball position related to the start of his swing to past impact. His center of his chest is still over that golf ball position, where the one on the left side, the newer one, it's moved over, which signifies there's a lot of turning getting away to his right side, but his head tries to stay back to make sure his head's back. So I just see a little bit too much turn, a loss of tilting with the shoulders, but this all stems from where? So here's the bonus question I was talking about. Make sure you email this to tony@lyingolfacademy.com. Comments will be off, and we're going to open up the comments later on in the video once somebody has the answer. So the question is, what should you look for when you change your setup? Send me the answer. Hope that helps you, and I hope this helps you personally who allowed me to use this video. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you do like this type of stuff, hit that like, share, subscribe for more education. Other than that, have a happy new year. I'll see you next year. And don't forget, next year, New Year's goals for golf. Think about them. What are they going to be? Hopefully to hit it shorter and straighter, because remember, you hit more greens in regulation from the fairway than you do outside of the fairway. Don't compare yourself to the pros, because they do the opposite. You're not a pro, but I hope that helps you. See you next time. Fairways and greens.